Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a wide array of topics, but we're going to start off with a message that came from Jawad Zarif, who's an Iranian academic and diplomat who held senior positions in the Iranian establishment, that has a different tone than previous messages coming from Iran that I found it relevant to share with you. And I also wanted to talk to you about Benjamin Netanyahu and his declarations about this war, the fact that we're talking about an existential war. And now it appears to be that Israel is changing its ways when it comes to the prisoners of war in Gaza, and his offer to the people, the fighters holding the Israeli prisoners inside of Gaza. And I also wanted to talk to you about the operation that Hamas is conducting in Gaza, because you have a lot of talk in mainstream media about Hamas stealing the aid. Of course, all propaganda, but now I'm going to elaborate further as to who's actually stealing the aid in Gaza and who's allowing them or giving them the aid to steal, spoiler, where it comes from. And then I'm going to be talking to you about the Ukrainian forces under Zelensky attacking Russia with the attack MS missiles deep into Russian territory, while simultaneously Vladimir Putin declaring that he's changing the doctrine when it comes to Russia and what they're doing against Zelensky. And I'm going to start off with this video. Like I said, Jawad Zarif is an Iranian diplomat. He held senior positions in Iran. And he has been one of the leading figures in terms of negotiations when it comes to Iran's foreign policy. So he shared this on his X account yesterday.
Salam, shalom. Peace to those of any faith, language, or ethnicity who cherish freedom and justice. Greetings to the followers of all religions and all children of Abraham, regardless of their creed, ethnicity, or language. Shalom to my fellow Iranians of Jewish faith and all followers of Prophet Moses across the globe. I begin in the name of our one compassionate and merciful God to remind us all of the urgency of preventing the spread of war, bloodshed, plunder, and oppression. I speak to you, Jewish people across the world, as a citizen of an ancient nation with a rich history of tolerance and humanity. For over 2,000 years, my nation has been a symbol of peaceful coexistence among various religions, cultures, languages, dialects, races, and ethnicities. Supporting the oppressed, the displaced, and those seeking refuge from genocide has always been a trait of my nation in its long and proud history. Liberating the Jews suffering under the Babylonians over 2,600 years ago. Receiving Jews displaced by the Nazis and fascists during World War II. Opening its arms to millions of Afghans fleeing foreign occupation, and assisting Palestinians, Lebanese, and Syrians displaced by aggression and apartheid. We Iranians throughout history have sought peace but defended our land, absorbed occupiers in our culture, and never stopped supporting the oppressed. My fellow human beings, a few years ago, I had the honor of contributing to a unique achievement of multilateral diplomacy to end the manufactured crisis over Iran's peaceful nuclear program. Yet Netanyahu, who himself had contributed to the manufacturing of this crisis, made it his historic mission to obstruct and kill the nuclear deal an agreement that would have ensured that the wolf this habitual liar was always crying about would never come to town. That agreement could have been the foundation of a new era of peace, tranquility, regional cooperation, and freedom from threats, conflicts, and escalating tension. However, before too long, Netanyahu and his Zionist and extremist cohorts succeeded in their satanic effort to rob the region and the world of this historic opportunity, standing on the wrong side of history. Standing on the wrong side of history again, Netanyahu and his regime, along with Israel's Western enablers, have unleashed the machinery of death and destruction in the region, causing carnage and crimes against humanity in a genocidal campaign that has murdered over 50,000 civilians, including over 10,000 children. But resistance to occupation will not die by killing children or even its leaders. I am confident that for all good human beings of Jewish faith and origin, a terrorist regime whose record has nothing but apartheid, genocide, carnage, looting, and systematic violence cannot represent Judaism, a divine Abrahamic religion that we all respect. Rather, this regime and its practices are simply reincarnations of the darkness of Nazism and fascism. Dear friends, sisters, and brothers, aggressive Zionism is nothing but an expansionist secular movement, deceitfully using Judaism to advance its colonial and racist agenda. It abuses the memories and blood of Jewish victims of the Holocaust who perished during World War II, while Zionism itself is nothing but racism, chauvinism, militarism, terrorism, expansionism, apartheid, and hatred against other nations and religions. It deceitfully claims to be the representative and protector of Jewish people worldwide, while in practice, it is the greatest threat to the dignity and security of the Jewish people. This regime does not uphold the Ten Commandments of Prophet Moses. Rather, it violates each and every one of these divine laws. It worships power, not God. It sacrifices Jews and Gentiles at the altar of Zionism. It uses the name of the Lord in vain to justify genocide. It ruins the honor of all Jews throughout history. It operates rape camps to violate the dignity of Palestinian hostages. It has made stealing people's land a full-time habit. It has turned bearing false witness into a global industry. It considers others as subhuman and covets its neighbors' houses, villages, and entire country, and on and on. My fellow Iranians of Jewish faith and Jewish people across the globe, you're not just horrified by the Zionist crimes committed against others, you yourself are victims of Zionist assault on your faith and identity. Continue to stand as you have done in the streets of Western capitals with all the innocent victims of Zionism in Palestine and elsewhere. Continue to support those at the forefront of this resistance who defend human dignity. Save the divine Abrahamic Jewish faith from Zionist forgeries marred by aggression, apartheid, and genocide. As you stand for humanity, consider the Iranian nation your ally in this noble and just resistance. May God bless us all.
Mic muted, unmute the mic. So the reason why I wanted to share this video with you, not because it's coming with anything new, by the way. Iran's approach generally has been the same. Iran distinguishes very much between the Zionists and the Jews. And of course, mainstream media and the propaganda that's constantly spread is that they're to only eliminate the only Jewish state and. But the reason that I showed this video to you and shared it is the fact that Jawad Zarif has basically said everything clearly, all in one sentence, when it comes to the approach of Iran and its approach towards the situation, especially when it comes to Palestine. And this is coming also after a period of turmoil in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu and his genocide campaign is destroying Israel from within. They recently revealed several networks of Israeli Jews from different ages, different backgrounds, males, females, young, old, operating for Iran. And the recent assassination attempts when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu and the fact that the man does not move unless authorized by the head of his security, all of these things indicate that there is internal demand to take down Benjamin Netanyahu. The most recent escalation was the flash bombs launched at his house, thrown at his house, from most likely Israeli Jews. You know, these people protest against him regularly, and they're protesting in front of his house, in his residing place, also in Jerusalem as well. And the criticism internally against Benjamin Netanyahu is escalating. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is Benjamin Netanyahu. He made a couple of statements. Benjamin Netanyahu, he firstly made a statement saying that we are in the middle of an existential war, a difficult existential war, and we are paying heavy prices. So Netanyahu is confirming yet again that they are in an existential war, meaning, well, for those of you who always, say, how can you say it's an existential threat or that Israel is about to be destroyed? Well, why else would the prime minister say we're in existential war? They know they can be doomed, or that they will be at some point done as a state. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu says we're in an existential war, and the top leading figures in Israel say we are in an existential war. That's not a light thing to say in Israel. We are in an existential war. If your top figure in the state says we are in the middle of an existential war, this indicates that there's an opportunity for this state to no longer exist. Very simple. So he said that, but he's also trying to flex muscles at the same time. He wants to push for his delusions. He's saying that, and he apparently made a visit to Gaza with his newly appointed genocide minister, Israel Katz. They visited Gaza, and this came as a flash report in Israel, saying that after saying that dozens would soon be released from captivity, again, Netanyahu saying that soon many will be released, the prime minister visited the Netzarim axis in Gaza. Clearly on the coastal line, that's assuming he is in Gaza, because everything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Why? Because the Netzarim axis has a base in the east, in the center, and in the western part near the coast. Whoever finds a hostage for us will receive $5 million and a way out. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Israel Katz, Chief of Staff Major General Herzi Halevi, and Shin Bet Chief Ronen Bar visited the Netzarim corridor in the Gaza Strip today. Netanyahu and Katz received a regional overview from Division 99 Commander Yoav Brunner and Major General of the Southern Yaron Command Finkelman from one of the vantage points in the corridor. Later, they held a dialogue with the commanders of the reserve brigades on the coast of Gaza, saying Hamas will not rule Gaza. We are eliminating its military capabilities in a very impressive way. We are moving to its governmental capabilities, and the hand is still tilted. Hamas will not be in Gaza. It appears to be that Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, you will be the one not remaining inside the occupied territories, and the Palestinian people will be remaining there. This is what looks like it's happening. And he also added, we are also making an effort from this place and everywhere to locate our abductees and return them. You've been trying to locate them for over a year. What are you talking about? You've been saying that you're trying to eliminate Hamas for over a year. What are you doing? What kind of a joke is this? You said 1 year ago that you already started to target Hamas's military capabilities and that you won't stop until you eliminate them. What do you mean you haven't done with the job yet? What a failed army, what a failed state, what a failed campaign. What incompetence, what weakness is this? What kind of a failed entity are you? Committing crimes against the innocent people and destroying everything and not being able to do anything against the people who you're claiming you're fighting, Hamas? That's a humiliation. That's a massive failure. And then he continued, we will continue to do this, to get them all, the living and everything. I want to say that those who are holding our abductees, whoever dares to harm our abductees, his blood is in his head. We will pursue you and we will get you. The Prime Minister again addressed those holding the hostages and offered them money and a safe exit from the Strip. I also say to those who want to get out of this maze, whoever brings us a kidnapped will find a safe way. He and his family to get out. We will also give a reward of $5 million for each kidnapper. Choose, the choice is yours, but the result will be the same result. I mean, delusions. This man is totally delusional. Firstly, like I said, 1 year into it, you're still saying that you are targeting Hamas's military capabilities and you're reaching their governmental capabilities, indicating that you haven't even touched their governmental capabilities because they are still operational in Gaza. What kind of a massive failure is that? Now, not only that he is unable to defeat Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, because it's not just Hamas or its armed wing fighting Israel, he is unable to stop them from a governmental side and from their civilian operating side, civil services in Gaza. And that was very evident from two recent reports that came about the theft of the aid and Hamas's operation against the thieves operating with Israel. And before I get into the report, Hamas started an operation 2 days ago against all of the thieves operating with Israel when it comes to aid. And why is that happening? I'll give you a bit of a background. Israel tried to instill certain figures, sometimes with the help of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, when they smuggled in through Egypt. Somehow Egypt said they didn't know. Forces that belong to Majid Faraj, the head of the Palestinian intelligence in the West Bank, basically the Zionist agents in the West Bank, to go into Gaza and wreak havoc and take control over the aid and whatever goes in. Israel also tried to speak with the tribes, some of the tribe leaders in Gaza, and they later released a statement saying that we will not be operating hand in hand with the occupation. We only recognize the only legitimate sovereign and elected government, which is the Hamas government. Then they tried to revive a certain movement called Jayshul Islam, or the Army of Islam. Yes, Israel deals with a movement calling itself the Army of Islam, to conduct terror attacks. That's the same movement that kidnapped Alan Johnston, the BBC reporter, who Hamas later on released. Again, yeah, might be new news for you or some of you. But it didn't work with them. It did not work with them because Hamas still has a stronghold in Gaza. Then they clearly had a way of trying to get to some of the criminals in Gaza. So there have been people who have been conducting criminal activities previously in Gaza. Israel, of course, knows them. Money motivated, greed at the expense of the suffering of the Palestinian people. And Israel tried to lure them with money and with some weapons in some cases. Israel delivers the aid from the two main checkpoints in Gaza, and they're allowing this aid to reach these criminal gangs. But now Hamas started the operation. And what do? These gangs, they steal the aid, actually, and they start selling it at very high prices, not allowing it to reach either the authorities in Gaza, which is the Hamas government, to distribute it to the population, or any aid organizations. Why? Because Israel is targeting both Hamas and the aid organizations and anyone trying to get aid to the actual people, but they want this situation to be tense around Gaza. So we have an operation from the Interior Ministry inside of Gaza, and it's not a joke, as in Hamas, they're not playing around with the people stealing the aid. And we had one report here on a website, it's called Arabi 21, saying the Ministry of Interior in Gaza carries out security operation against gangs looting aid. And they said sources in the Ministry of Interior in Gaza Strip revealed on Monday a security operation carried out by the security services in cooperation with tribal communities against aid-looting gangs under the cover of the Israeli occupation. So clearly they're fully functioning, some of them, as in the security forces inside of Gaza, although we have Israeli occupation in many parts, and Israel's committing all of these crimes. The same sources stated that more than 28 truck thieves were killed as a result of the security operation, according to Al-Aqsa TV. The sources added that today's operation will not be the last, and it's the beginning of a comprehensive security operation that has been planned for a long time and will expand to include all those involved in stealing aid trucks, stressing that the security services will punish with an iron fist anyone involved in helping these thieves' gangs. The security campaign does not target specific clans, but rather aims to eliminate the phenomenon of truck theft, which has greatly affected society and caused signs of famine in the southern Gaza Strip, noting that the security services are proud of the Palestinian clans of East Rafah, some of which their members being drawn into theft plans. I'm not sure if that was a mistranslation here. Into theft plans will not harm the history of these families who have provided hundreds of resistance martyrs, or they are, as in certain clans targeting these, or tribes targeting the thieves. And they also indicated that they are operating directly from the Israeli Shin Bet. They are directly working with Israel. So clearly Israel has found certain people to hand aid to in Gaza. And who are they? Criminal gangs, clearly. Why? Because to them, they want to create this crisis in Gaza when it comes to food, when it comes to aid, and they don't want it to reach the people, but show that they are allowing aid in. So what do? They allow very limited numbers of aid in. They hand it to criminal gangs who exploit the population and start reselling it to the population at ridiculous prices. I'm talking like a bag of wheat or flour will cost you $150. You're talking about people with hardly anything to eat. So clearly this operation is being targeted now by the Hamas forces inside of Gaza, and it's bothering Israel, of course. The question is, will they now reduce the already limited amounts that they get in from Gaza or not? We already passed the ultimatum that the United States has given Israel. Well, this, I'm not sure what to call it, a fake ultimatum, or what is it exactly? It expired last week, but ever since then we're hearing about more aid going in. But again, you're seeing the situation when it comes to the aid, and these gangs, Israel handing it to these gangs, stealing the actual aid, but clearly Hamas in Gaza are trying to take every measure possible when it comes to targeting those thieves, taking them down, and allowing the aid to go into Gaza. Which leads me to the final thing, is two related things that I wanted to talk to you about. We have Ukraine beginning to use the ATACMS missiles that have been provided to them by Joe Biden. Joe Biden, just a few days back, authorized the delivery of ballistic missiles to Ukraine, and he's allowing them to use them against Russia in what is considered to be a very large escalation when it comes to the war between Russia and Ukraine. After taking permission from the West, Ukraine launches its first attack MS missiles on Bryansk. So, for those of you who, or for the people who are saying like, well, where they've just authorized them, they might consider, they might not use them, whatever. No, they started using them immediately. Clearly, genocide supporting Zelensky, because he supports the genocide against the Palestinian people. For those of you who don't know, he supports Israel, and he condemns the Palestinian side. Man, look at how much of a hypocrite he is. He's claiming that he's fighting an occupation, but he supports Israel and he condemns the Palestinian resistance. And he even asks Israel to increase the aid or give aid to Ukraine. He's clearly trying to max out on the period of Joe Biden in the White House up until Donald Trump comes, because there are many indications that Donald Trump will, in the case of Ukraine, not in the case of Israel, actually take certain concrete measures when it comes to stopping the war, especially with the fact that you've had reports, again, some of them are not, very concrete, but we've had them from before 2016, that Russia holds sensitive information about Donald Trump, and therefore, he needs to play ball with them. The Russian Defense Ministry said Ukrainian forces attacked the facility in Russia's border province of Bryansk with 6 US-made attack MS missiles last night. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement on Tuesday that the Ukrainian army launched an attack at 3:25 a.m. last night in a facility in Bryansk with 6 ballistic missiles, which according to confirmed data are US-made tactical operations missiles. They indicated that the crews of the S-400 and Pantsir air defense systems shot down 5 missiles and damaged the 6th, whose debris fell on a technical area of a military facility in the Bryansk region, which led to a fire that was immediately extinguished without any casualties or destruction. It is worth noting that the New York Times reported last Sunday, quoting unnamed U.S. administration representatives, that U.S. President Joe Biden had allowed Ukraine for the first time to use long-range U.S. missiles to bomb deep inside Russian territory. And now they are proving it. Indeed, they have received these missiles, and now they are using them again to use all of this period remaining to attack Russia with increased capabilities. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov noted that Washington's decision means a qualitative new wave of attention and transition to a new situation in terms of U.S. involvement in the Ukrainian conflict. President Vladimir Putin has formulated Russia's position very clearly and unambiguously regarding decisions to strike with long-range weapons on its territory, and the collective West has received those signals. What are those signals? Those signals are that Putin now is introducing, or has already introduced, a new doctrine when it comes to Russian nuclear weapons. Meaning, they still use them for defensive measures. It's not like they want to attack or indeed have it as a doctrine to start using nuclear weapons as attack means, but that will give them more leniency when it comes to their defensive capabilities in terms of what they consider to be an enemy hostile attack and what would justify a nuclear doctrine. And this is very important. And this is another article that I wanted to share with you, because you're talking about nuclear weapons. I mean, weapons that can destroy the world many times. Russia has over 6,000 warheads of nuclear weapons, likewise with the US, and you have so many other nuclear countries. And yet they're taking all of these, the United States establishment and its proxies and Western countries are taking this hostile approach towards Russia. Funny enough, although Russia is a nuclear country that has the capacity to use nuclear weapons, and many consider to have been so restrained so far with its war in Ukraine, yet they are so flexible with a genocidal little entity called Israel. The levels of hypocrisy are unbelievable. But I wanted to share this also with you. Putin approves updated Russian nuclear doctrine. The presidential decree states that in order to improve Russian state policy in the field of nuclear deterrence, it is decided to adopt the document Fundamentals of the State Policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence. The decree will enter force from the date of its signing today, November 19th. The updated Russian nuclear doctrine confirms that the state's policy in the field of nuclear deterrence is defensive in nature, that Russia is making all necessary efforts to reduce the nuclear threat, and that it views nuclear weapons as a means of deterrence and considers their use a last resort measure. And here are the details. The following are the most important provisions of the Russian nuclear doctrine. Deterring a potential enemy from attacking Russia and its allies is one of the government's top priorities, not only Russia, but its allies as well. Aggression against Russia and its allies by a non-nuclear state with the support of a nuclear state would be considered a joint attack, meaning that the non-nuclear state would be considered as if it has nuclear bombs. Therefore, it would increase the risk when it comes to Russia, allowing it to potentially use nuclear bombs if they need to defend themselves. Russia's willingness and determination to use nuclear weapons will ensure nuclear deterrence. Russia can use nuclear weapons in the event of a serious threat to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of itself and Belarus. One of the conditions for using nuclear weapons is launching ballistic missiles at Russia, meaning now they can use nuclear bombs. That's the most important one. One of the conditions of using nuclear weapons is launching ballistic missiles at Russia. That means what Zelensky has done now can justify the use of nuclear bombs. Providing territory and resources for aggression against Russia is the basis for using nuclear deterrence against such a state. Aggression by any state of the military alliance against Russia or its allies shall be considered aggression by this alliance as a whole. Again, justifying not only potential attacks in Ukraine, but attacks in other territories that are supporting Ukraine. Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to the use of weapons of mass destruction against it and its allies. The president of Russia is one who makes the decision to use nuclear weapons and can, if necessary, inform other states and international organizations about Russia's readiness to use them, its decision taken in this regard, as well as the fact of using these weapons. So they're being very open about it. It's like Putin is going to declare, or you're probably going to give international organizations a warning that we are about, or will, or after they have already use nuclear weapons. Russia exercises nuclear deterrence against a potential adversary, a concept that includes states, blocs, and alliances that consider Russia an adversary. The state policy on nuclear deterrence is aimed at maintaining the potential of nuclear forces at a level sufficient for nuclear deterrence, maintaining uncertainty for a potential adversary regarding the extent and location of nuclear weapons. Use is a principle of nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence aims to ensure that a potential adversary realizes the inevitability of retaliation in the event of aggression against Russia. State policy in the field of nuclear deterrence in military conflict ensures the cessation of hostilities on terms acceptable by Russia. Maintaining constant readiness of the part of the nuclear deterrence forces designated for use is one of the principles for Russian nuclear deterrence. The deployment of missile defense systems in space by the enemy poses a threat that nuclear deterrence is used to neutralize. Centralization of control over nuclear forces, including those located outside Russian territory, is one of the principles of nuclear deterrence. Last September, Putin instructed the Russian Security Council to adapt its nuclear deterrence policy to new changes in the military and political situation and propose a number of clarifications regarding the conditions for Russia's use of nuclear weapons. So, we're basically closer to the use of nuclear weapons. We are basically much closer to the use of nuclear weapons, especially with the fact that the new doctrine of Russia's use of nuclear weapons includes the use of ballistic missiles against its territories, meaning they've already opened the path towards using nuclear weapons. This is what it blatantly states. Russia's blatantly now saying, we are in a position to use. We have already, from our perspective, justified the use of nuclear weapons against other countries that are escalating against us. Now, the United States knew that this was potentially coming alongside the genocide-supporting allies of the United States in the form of the NATO. And that's why they delayed the delivery of these ballistic missiles to Russia. How else can you explain that? If the ballistic missiles wouldn't have changed the equation when it comes to Russia, why didn't they do that before? They're doing it now, and they know the risk. They still approve the use of these ballistic missiles against Russia, although they knew something like that was coming. Again, all of this recklessness and all of this increased escalation is primarily caused by the United States establishment and NATO. NATO, that's supposed to be, or was intended to be, at least by the declarations, a defensive organization, has proven time after time that it's a soft, well, not a soft power really, but a front of the United States empire in Europe, implementing the ambitions of the United States militaristic oligarchy, spreading and its ambitions to control Russia as a state. Control Russia because they want the oil, they want the gas, they want the Russian state. It's not like they are all of a sudden caring so much for the lives of the Ukrainian people. No one buys that nonsense. Anyone who knows what the United States foreign policy is about, alongside its genocidal establishments and the NATO, knows these facts. And a very big proof of that is the fact that these powers support a genocide entity committing far, far worse crimes than any country has done in recent years, by the way. I mean, the levels of innocent people, innocent women, innocent children that Israel has killed in 1 year in Gaza surpasses global conflicts when it comes to children under 18 in the past 4 years. Yet Western powers act like they're blind. And they are allowing this comedian genocide supporting puppet Zelensky from increasing the tensions with Russia. So if we reach a stage where we actually do have back and forth nuclear attacks, you know exactly who to blame. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. And I'll open the space up for the community. If anyone has any questions or comments, read some of your input, open the space for you. Hey Chess, when Mahmoud, you're talking about the beard. Yeah, hey Chess, thank you so much. And the virus, thank you very much for your supers, much appreciated. And welcome everyone again for another live stream. And Bayzai, they committed all the war crimes under the sun, have had the support of the West money and missiles and committing Gaza, yet they haven't been able to defeat the Palestinians. No, and I think that's a miracle that they haven't been able to defeat the Palestinian people, first and foremost. It's a miracle that they haven't been able to, and it's also very inspiring to see so many, especially Gazan residents of the north, deciding to remain there despite all of the atrocities that are happening there. And this is something very frustrating for Benjamin Netanyahu, because he and his state thought that by committing immediate mass war crimes and mass killings and massacres, don't forget they killed 16,000 people in just over a month, by the way, the first month. Remember how hard it was and how many people were supporting this genocide entity fully. They thought that by this barbarism, they will all of a sudden force the Palestinian people into submission, only for them to reach 1 year later without achieving any of their war objectives. And Netanyahu and Israel, by the way, are doing this to prove a point. So they initially thought that, well, the Palestinian side and the Lebanese side thought that Israel wouldn't go to a long-term war of attrition. And Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to show the whole world that, no, we're not afraid of a war of attrition. We can continue down the path of a long war, and we can still protect ourselves and defeat our enemy in a long war. But the problem is we are seeing no signs of an Israeli victory. We are seeing no signs of an Israel achieving its military objectives. And we are seeing no signs of the Palestinians or the Lebanese submitting to the will of the genocidal entity, despite the fact that they are recruiting everyone they can from across the world to support them. And people from within, they're trying to do internal damage to wreak havoc and destroy the fabric internally, the societal fabric of societies, both in Palestine, in Gaza, and in Lebanon too. But that's also failing. And look at Gaza. Again, that's another miracle. They haven't been able to destroy the societal fabric and the harmony between the population and the resistance and the governing authorities in Gaza. These are miracles. Why? And again, why? Well, you don't have to think too much. Have they provided a better example? Has Israel provided them a better example? The Palestinian people in Gaza, have they only targeted Hamas bases? Have they refrained from going against the civilian population? Did they leave everything as it is for the population and only targeted Hamas and the people who fight them and the rest of the Palestinian armed resistance movements? No, they haven't. They've actually targeted the population, and Hamas is still there. So from the population perspective, well, I don't trust you anyway. And we have to continue and remain steadfast up until we defeat this entity. Plus, we have experience with them from before. 72% of the population of Gaza before the 7th of October were refugees already. Who made them refugees? The Zionist occupation made them refugees. So from their perspective, we're not going to be fooled again, right? If we were fooled before and Israel told us you can come back after the war and they haven't allowed them to go back, why would Israel do that now? And Mahmoud Salah Ahmed, the barbarism and genocide in Palestine and Lebanon is only escalating. How do you think this ends as things are just getting worse and the new US administration is even more supportive? Well, clearly, have they achieved anything? It's clearly evident how it will eventually end. Have they achieved anything so far 1 year on by using all of their missiles and arms and wreaking havoc, destroying everything, killing civilians and children in hospitals? Have they achieved anything? They haven't. So the reason for their destruction and the reason for them targeting so many innocent people is to instill the defeat, the spirit of defeat in the people they're fighting. Because how do you defeat other nations? You defeat their spirit, right? You defeat them from the inside and mentally, right? And from an awareness perspective. Before you defeat them on the ground, you need to make them feel like they are defeated and that there is no hope for them. And that's what Israel's trying to do. But these people's levels of faith and belief can be, they can volunteer with their faith and belief and self-confidence to the whole world, right? Both in Gaza and in Lebanon, and the people fighting Israel and standing up against it. You're not going to take them down. These people are not intimidated by you. They're not afraid of death. What's the shortest thing you can say here? They're not afraid of death. They're not afraid to sacrifice the thing that is considered to be the most valuable in your life. Your life. They're not afraid to sacrifice. How can you defeat them? When you have a country with people refusing to fight for the army, they're fleeing the country, internal fighting, they try and not fight as much as possible. All of their attacks are attacks of cowardice. When they're on the ground, they run like cowards and they're humiliated. You simply cannot defeat nations who constantly continue to fight you and call for their rights and do not stop. And in history as well, it's as if it's like a natural thing. Every nation that continued to fight for its rights, they always prevailed eventually. You know, it's as if you are meant to continue calling for what's yours and for your rights up until you get them, despite the fact that you can be faced with brutality. And there has never been a case in history, by the way, where the people resisting their occupier or the empire have had more power than the people fighting them. No, it's always the occupying force and the colonial force and the empire having more power and inflicting more death upon the population. Right? But eventually, when they continue, they were victorious. And this is what we will see, both in Palestine and in Lebanon. What is being destroyed is the state of Israel. What is being eliminated is Zionism. And everyone is becoming more aware of that. And the fact that we have, by the way, Donald Trump coming, that's not going to make any difference, by the way. Donald Trump, the people are not waiting for him. But do you think the Palestinians or the Lebanese are like waiting for a savior coming from a genocide supporting entity? Apart from those who are delusional already and you know, their moral compass is questionable. Like you'll have some of the people in Lebanon saying, well, why did we participate? We should cut the tie with Gaza and we have nothing to do with it. Would you have wanted everyone to abandon you if your country was attacked? Or would you be saying, where is the world not helping us? The level of hypocrisy and short-sightedness with some people is unbelievable. But you have this ignorance. But again, that's not even dependent on these people. It's dependent on the people who will continue to stand up against these war criminals. And there are more than enough people both in the Levant, in West Asia, and across the world, who will continue to call for equal human rights and end the massive war machine supported by the United States establishment, which in effect is a massive militaristic oligarchy spreading terror and havoc across the world. And thank you for that. That was from Mahib. And HS, thank you again. You said, do you think Iran will really retaliate at this point? It seems that the momentum is lost. It also seemed that the momentum was lost before. You know, many people were like, where is Iran? Why don't they do it now? Where are they? Why are they delaying it so much? And criticizing and complaining and this and that. Fact of the matter is they are the ones who are doing the attack, and they are the ones who will be calculating. They are the ones who will be paying the price, or are willing to pay the price when it happens. They are the ones in charge of tens of millions of lives also inside of Iran. They are the ones who will calculate all of the things, and they know best when to and when not to attack. I think it's coming from based on previous patterns that happened before, not some kind of just assumption. Well, they said they will, and they have before several times, but there are no signs of them, you know, not doing that again. I think the United States is playing a game again, and I'm not sure Iran's delay is due to that, by the way. Not to say that Iran's previous delay was for them naively believing the United States war administration about the ceasefire talks, but they have used it in their arguments to show that, well, look, the United States told us, wait, we have a ceasefire in a week's time. That was back in July, and don't attack Israel. And the Iranian President Pezeshkian told them, well, yeah, we haven't attacked. So what happened? Did we have a ceasefire? No, we haven't had a ceasefire. And they went. And they gave Israel some massive blows to a level where Netanyahu was shaking. They petrified the genocide state. And I think they will be doing this again, and the Operation True Promise 3 will cause earthquakes in the occupied territories. When, how, we don't know. Again, they are the ones conducting it. And because they are the ones conducting it, they will know when it's suitable for them to conduct such attacks. And John is saying, do you think the US will be the first to use a nuclear bomb on Russia? I think they would be studying that. I think they would be considering that. But you know, again, I mean, the is it in a position? That's the question. Is the United States administration, are they in a position to go and increase the tensions now and actually do something that will involve the United States directly? Are they? The war in Ukraine has had a lot of criticism from many people inside of the United States, including President-elect Donald Trump himself, who said he will end it in one day. So they know that there is no willingness, and there are many indications that the coming administration will actually stop what's happening and strike a deal. Even Zelensky himself is worried. So for them to go and use that, and again, when Russia says stuff about its nuclear doctrine, that's not necessarily to say that they will be attacking the United States. And if they attack a country in Europe, what will that affect the US, by the way? Nothing. Nothing. The establishment in Europe, by the way, is not serving its own population. All of the policies that they are following, the US establishment like sheep, like blind sheep, are causing harm to Europe economically, from a security level, from a security perspective. And the United States, I mean, if they attack Ukraine or a couple of locations with tactical nuclear bombs, for example, it's a massive worrying thing, by the way. But will the United States be affected? No, they won't be affected. They're far off. And again, Russia's not interested in a nuclear war, by the way. They're just doing that to try and send a message to the United States and Europe to stop, to actually stop. Turkish Truth Hurts. Mahmoud, the United States warned Turkey on November 18th for hosting Hamas leadership, saying Washington does not believe leaders of a terrorist organization should be living comfortably. Thoughts? This shows the entitlement and arrogance of Western countries led by the United States. Who are you to say that who's allowed to host Hamas and who's not? Firstly, who views Hamas the way that the United States views them, by the way? Only 34 countries globally prescribe Hamas as a terrorist organization. 161 countries consider Hamas to be a legitimate political movement resisting for its rights. So that means the majority of the world, to be more accurate, 83% of the world view Hamas as a legitimate political movement conducting acts of armed resistance which are under international law that they are entitled to do. The countries who prescribe them or view them the same twisted way as the United States establishment does and other countries too, are the countries who are mostly with neo-colonial history, mass enslavement, and like to complain when their victim stands up and slaps them in the face. These are the countries. What, the US, Britain, France, Germany, who? Do you know what I mean? So it shows you the neo-colonialist, arrogant, and twisted way of the Western powers. Now, when it comes to Turkey, they haven't been able to rein in Turkey when it comes to Hamas. Plus, you have already been negotiating with Hamas, you hypocrite liar. You've been negotiating with them in Qatar and Turkey. Who are you going to negotiate with to reach a peace process? What are you talking about? But Turkey, firstly, there is no evidence that the headquarters of Hamas, for example, are now in Turkey, by the way. All of these are reported. It might happen at some point, but it still hasn't been confirmed yet. And Erdogan had Ismail Haniyeh in the Turkish parliament, and he constantly talks about the fact that Hamas is a resistance movement that is legitimate, and he hails them also. Erdogan says Hamas are like the heroes of our time and defending us and. But there have been back and forth between them and certain figures in Hamas. For example, Saleh al-Aruri, who was assassinated in Lebanon, he was in Turkey. Israel used to always tell Turkey, this man is conducting operations against us, instructing people in the West Bank to conduct operations against us. You need to expel him. Eventually, Turkey did let him go, by the way. He went to Lebanon and he was assassinated. But if they would want to host Hamas or any other movement in Turkey, no one's entitled them to tell them what to do. I mean, of course, the only problem is, or the only limitation you have, is that Turkey is a part of NATO. But again, even with their membership of NATO, they've proven that they can play with things to a level where they are not fully supportive of the official NATO position. And that we have evidence from that when it comes to Iraq and Afghanistan, by the way. Turkey did not participate militarily in these countries, and they did not allow, that was back in 2003, they did not allow the United States to conduct attacks against Iraq from Turkish territories, although Turkey is a member of NATO. So we need to appreciate the fact that Turkey as a state that has an independent position, even with its membership of NATO. And that's what I think about that. I mean, the United States is not in a position to tell any country who to host and who not to host. And I think countries who allow that are shameful and don't have any independence and don't have any sovereignty. Who are these countries to tell them what to do, right? Like some of the European leaders saying, oh, Hamas shouldn't play a role in Gaza. Who are you even? Who are you? What an arrogant dictator. Who are you to tell the people of Gaza who to choose and not to choose? All you need to think about is how to stop supporting a genocide. Firstly, stop being a genocide supporter, right? Arming a genocidal entity, and stop becoming a morally corrupt and depraved war criminal. This is what you should, and stop interfering in other nations' issues, you know? Western powers go all across the world, wreak havoc, and then cry because someone is standing up for them. Typical arrogance. But those days are over, by the way. That's it. And also Kashmiri vlog saying about Zelensky using a 300 missile long range supplied by the USA. Yeah, that is true. And we just spoke about it in the beginning. In the beginning, we spoke about Zelensky and the report that they have indeed started using those missiles, and the immediate Russian update about their nuclear doctrine. If you go back to the final part of the the live stream before I opened to the community, I spoke about it in much detail, and now that led to Russia changing its nuclear defense doctrine, allowing them to use nuclear weapons against a country that uses ballistic missiles against it, meaning they've already justified using ballistic missiles against Ukraine. And also justifying or making it possible for Russia, in accordance to the new doctrine, to attack any country that supports Ukraine with nuclear weapons too. So they have more flexibility when it comes to the use of nuclear weapons. And again, as a result of the recklessness of genocide supporting Zelensky and his masters. And Faria Hussein, Mahmoud, what are your thoughts about Yemen's military capabilities? The Americans don't even know what the Yemenis have, and frustrated by this. They clearly have good military capabilities, not the most advanced in the world, but they clearly have enough to expel US aircraft carriers. That's a massive accomplishment that is underrated and underplayed globally, by the way. The fact that Ansarullah in Yemen were the main contributor to the departure of USS Eisenhower and USS Abraham Lincoln from the Red Sea and from the Persian Gulf. These are astonishing things, and they constantly attack genocide-linked ships every single day. And they reach up to the Mediterranean. They have capabilities, and they are continuously using them, and they are using them in solidarity and support for the Palestinian people, despite the fact that Yemen is just coming out from a massive war that has been imposed on them by the war criminal Saudi regime. Again, some of these Arab countries, they will start flexing muscles when you talk about another Arab country and become like little dogs with their tails between their legs when you talk about a genocidal entity committing war crimes in Gaza. The levels of corruption. But again, they are showing that they can, and they continue, and it's limited. I mean, what the US and Britain and their forces in the genocide coalition can do when it comes to Yemen are very limited. They can't do a lot to them. They can have these theatrical strikes. So they're not going to stop them. They don't know a lot about their infrastructure. And the geography of Yemen is very complicated, similar to Afghanistan in many ways. And they've clearly developed certain ways to conduct these operations in a way where they would be able to continuously do them, even if they have limited exposure from where they conducted certain attacks, because again, that's something that they are willing to sacrifice. And thank you for that, and thank you so much as well. And Saeed Abdi, Hebrew media is saying that Lebanon is getting closer to a civil war. Any truth to that? Saying, it's like saying Joe Biden can walk up the stairs without falling. Listen, Israel lies as a state more than it breathes. These people are hyper-pathological liars. And everything that come out, the Hebrew media in Israel is basically the propaganda arm of the state of Israel. They are there to brainwash first and foremost the Israeli population, give them some sort of comfort and solace, and downplay any attacks and any threats that are coming on Israel. And there's mass military censorship. These are just this is just wishful thinking and delusions coming from Israel. Of course, there are a couple of morally depraved Lebanese who would welcome an Israeli occupation, but they are a minority. Lebanon, in its majority, support the Lebanese resistance. Without the Lebanese resistance, there is no Lebanon. They are the people who liberated Lebanese lands and expelled the genocide forces from South Lebanon and from the border areas. These are the people who are protecting Lebanon, the Lebanese resistance. So and the hopes and dreams about a civil war, they're not going to become reality too. Why? Because the basis of a civil war in Lebanon would be a sectarian basis. Even if we talk about the previous sectarian wars that Lebanon faced previously, they actually, in fact, included people of all backgrounds fighting on both sides. So you had Christians for, Christian against, Muslim for, Muslim against. Do you understand? Even now, you will have many in the Christian community supporting the resistance, others opposing. Likewise, even with the sect that, for example, the resistance follows, some of them will oppose them and some of them will stand with them. But again, the majority of the Lebanese people are aware of that, and no amount of propaganda will change things. Lebanon will not be facing a civil war. Lebanon will end up prevailing, and Israel is going to be expelled from Lebanon pretty soon. They are unable to conduct hardly anything in Lebanon. The other day I spoke about one of the previous senior figures in the Israeli military establishment, saying that the levels of losses in South Lebanon are unacceptable. Now, officially, Israel claims just a few hundred wounded and killed in South Lebanon, and they have 5 divisions consisting of over 60,000 troops. If you have 60,000 troops, why would a couple of hundred people gone be so dramatic? It shouldn't be so dramatic. Clearly, they're hiding the level of numbers of losses that they have faced and were met with in Lebanon, like they did in Gaza. Israel is a failed state. Israel is destroying itself from within. The only state that will be facing or is actually facing a cold civil war is Israel, and it's only a matter of time. And there is an argument, this has already began, that they will be fighting each other and trying to kill each other too inside of Israel. And the recent attempt to take Benjamin Netanyahu's life and the back and forth death threats coming from Netanyahu's camp and the anti-Netanyahu camp only indicate that it's Israel facing a civil war that will become bloody at some point, not Gaza and not Lebanon. And also, Amra, thank you so much. And Mahdi, you said, what was the last night Lebanon accepting U.S. ceasefire about? There's no confirmation they accepted a ceasefire. The only confirmation that we had is about the points or reservations of Hezbollah being passed, reportedly, to Hochstein. So the United States came with a draft. Nabih Berri, who was in charge of the negotiations in Lebanon, passed it to Hezbollah. Hezbollah passed it back with reservations. And the reservations haven't been published. And by the way, they're most likely surrounding the flexibility, what's labeled as the flexibility of the genocide forces in Lebanon, and basically a one-sided implementation of 1701, with Israel being able to conduct whatever it wants in Lebanon, but not the Lebanese. And also, that's from Cyber Estok about the Hochstein's visit, is to pass the draft, continue the talk about a ceasefire, and get the points that are coming from Hezbollah about the ceasefire draft that has been sent from Hochstein to Lebanon, and then make a decision on how you proceed. And Angela Brody, thank you so much. And also Elvira, thank you so much for that. Okay, we'll take the last one here from Fari Hussein Mahmoud. After the collapse of Israel, what do you think the regimes of Saudi and Jordan will do? They've been silently supporting the devil's consistent trade, but how will they manage? Well, these regimes, they support Israel and oppose the Palestinian struggle for liberation and justice because they don't want something similar happening in their own countries, because they are oppressive regimes that are authoritarian, and to them any win for the people, whether it's the Palestinians or someone else, is a win for the people. And usually authoritarian dictatorships, including in the West, by the way, the West is just a show of democracy, they don't like a win for the people. Because a win for the people usually goes against the greedy elite minority that is only looking to manipulate the population and make them basically products that they can use. So that's why Jordan and Saudi Arabia or other regimes that are, supporting Israel, if not publicly, from in other ways, are worried. And that's why their media will constantly talk in a negative manner about the Palestinian struggle for liberation. They're very worried about that. And also, Studio, I see something from you. Thank you so much for that. I said Israel's demographics were a lie. Do you think American immigration outrage in reality is hiding a demographic crisis? It's been shown that the Palestinian demographics is the unseen hand of war. The demographics of Palestine since 2015, you have a majority of Palestinians in the area between the Jordan River to the sea. Of course, publicly, Israel officially denies that with their officially stated statistics published every year. But the Israeli statistics published every year about the Israeli population include Israelis who hold an Israeli nationality who reside permanently abroad. Before the 7th of October, you were talking about 1.2 million Israeli Jews residing abroad, excluding their descendants. Following the 7th of October, within a month, 300,000 Israelis who were abroad on holidays did not come back to Israel because of the war. 600,000 more left. That's only 1 month in. Ever since then, Israel has stopped publishing statistics. But all of these things indicate that despite this demographic problem, they're facing an even deeper demographic problem, in effect allowing a small cult inside of Israel to control the destiny of the majority of the Israelis first, and the majority of the population between the Jordan River to the sea, including the Palestinian people. Now, when it comes to this being a part of the war on Gaza, I think that is something that could be very correct. Israel already had a plan. They previously offered Gaza to Egypt. They said, take the territory. Gaza did not want that. They were like, it's a traditionally Palestinian territory. Although Egypt controlled Gaza before 1967. Back in the 50s, they controlled it. But they refused. And to Israel, well, we're dealing with 2.3 million people who are only growing, and we don't want them to have a state. And the only way is to expel them. So they started implementing the campaign of ethnic cleansing that they had prepared from the 70s. By the way, Israel had this ethnic cleansing campaign for Gaza prepared since the 70s, just that they took it out of the drawer now because they capitalized on the 7th of October that they already knew about. And they started spewing all of this propaganda and lies to justify mass ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people through constant genocide, war crimes, and barbarism. But again, it doesn't appear that that's working. It doesn't look like it's working. But it did indeed play a part when it comes to Israel, and they're not hiding their intentions for demographic changes when it comes to the West Bank, when it comes to the Palestinian citizens inside of Israel, and even the Palestinians in other locations too, that are a threat to every nation next to them. Hell, they're a threat to the world. When Netanyahu says we can reach everywhere in the world, and if we get destroyed, the whole world gets destroyed. You're talking about a psychopathic maniac. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. Apologies if I haven't reached all of your comments. Thank you for everyone who sent supers. Elvira Studio Rainer. Elvira, again, thank you. Angela Brody and Amra FHS and the virus. Thank you so much. I'll be with you with a video after this, hopefully, and another live stream tomorrow. In the meantime, stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.